All right. Good morning. I am hanging out at the Silver Pines Lodge in Idyllwild, California. So yesterday I took a 0 day. 0 meaning I hiked 0 PCT miles, took the day off in town, rested up, got my resupply, and I'm ready to get back on trail a little later today. So as I've been sharing this whole PCT journey, I've thought about sharing some other things, in this kind of sit down coffee talk, though I'm out of coffee, sadly. Just sit down kind of thing and share some thoughts from specific sections that either would help other hikers along the way. And then also share some things that go on more internally that I think if you're following along with this journey, just add a little bit more depth to it. I think that's my favorite part of the thru hikes. Last year I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail, and it's kind of just the way you get to know yourself in a deeper way, I think is very special. And one hiker said it best towards the end of the AT hike. Young guy, just out of high school, but I'd asked him if he felt like if he'd changed at all. And said he felt like a different person, but that he felt more like himself, which I thought was really deep and wise and resonated really deeply. It's like that's exactly how I feel. So I wanted to share some things like that as they pop up. So just starting out with the things that might help other hikers, a little bit from a planning lens, like, things I do differently in certain sections. And then also from kind of my work background lens. So I've worked as a physical therapist and also as a coach for endurance athletes, mostly people doing triathlons, long distance events, but that type of planning and physiology knowledge, and being out there and doing different, races, day-long races has been really helpful for me from a knowledge perspective out here. So I wanted to share that too. So starting with that, planning wise, in this section between Campo, the beginning, and Idyllwild, where I'm sitting now, what I would have done differently, nothing up through Julian. I went into Julian and I did my full resupply there. So that's the part that I would change first. So still going to Julian, get your free apple pie. If you need to go to the outfitter, there's a great outfitter there in 2 Foot Adventures. But then for my resupply, instead of resupplying all the way for Idyllwild, I would have just done a day's worth and got myself to the Montezuma Valley Market at mile 101. Because when you get down there, everything food-wise is in single servings. So I was able to pick up single serving Pop-Tarts, Ziploc bags, meals, pretty much anything you need food-wise you can get there. It was also a great stop. They come and pick you up at the parking lot for free. It's a 4-mile ride down the road. And I hung out there with some other hikers, charged my stuff, and it was a great stop. So I would have resupplied there to get myself to Idyllwild. And planning wise, the other thing I would have changed, and I feel silly not considering it, especially with my background and having thru hiked last year, is considering between the market and Idyllwild, San Jacinto is a pretty massive climb. So I would have looked at that a little, considered that differently, knowing that I'd probably have to slow down, and then also consider how far the water sources are off the trail. So when you get on San Jacinto, it's not technical, it's not hard, but much more challenging than kind of the easy, flat, at least smooth trail we'd had before. It gets a little rockier, some steep sections, some loose sections. The thing that really slows you down is there's still quite a bit of blowdown. I think after the fires a few years ago, some massive trees have blown down across the trail. And you're going to spend a good chunk of time in that last half of the climb navigating around those. So it all takes some time. So that, and now knowing that the water sources are mostly 1 mile off trail and down a steep slope that you then have to come back up. So that extra 2 miles round trip every time you have to get water adds up to. So saying all of that, just to say I would have packed at least an extra meal, and I think spent an extra night on the trail to get myself from Montezuma Valley Market to Idyllwild. It's just going to slow down. So consider that in your planning. The other thing I thought I'd share physiology-wise, this is we're all getting started on the trail. We're all building up our fitness and strength. And I think one area of opportunity to really build that up more quickly in a way that would be less likely to be injured or need to take some time off is to monitor your breathing on the climbs. So when you're going on the climbs, you're going to breathe a little harder. That's part of it. But there are certain thresholds metabolically that you can monitor with your breathing that can help you with pacing, and it actually helps you train up a little quicker too. So what I think is a good thing to try to avoid as much as possible is getting into what I call the red zone. So the red zone is your breathing gets to the point where you're breathing so hard, like if somebody came by and asked you a question, you either wouldn't want to answer, or maybe you'd spit out a couple words at a time. So when you get into this red zone, you've crossed a threshold where exponentially you're using a lot more of your internal resources. And when you dig that deep, the recovery on the other side is going to have to be pretty big. So you might get to that point and then you need a big break on the climb to get yourself recovered to keep going. Training wise too, it's also a different style. It's not quite as aerobic. I would consider this more like an anaerobic, like high intensity training, where if you go really hard and then you need that big break, you're training different systems that aren't as well suited to hiking a couple thousand miles along the coast. So a better way to pace and train to me is to take micro breaks early on. So as you're climbing, you start to breathe harder, but maybe it gets to the point where it's like, oh, I'm breathing harder. I could keep going for sure, but I notice it's more of a mental effort. I can feel a little more physically taxed in what I'm doing. I notice my breathing's getting a little heavier. That's a great time to take a 30 to 60 second break. So let everything come back to normal. Normal right now just meaning conversational type of breathing, like I'd be talking with you right now. Get back to that and then go again. So the thing that gets a little frustrating is being patient, because you might have to take a lot of those breaks early on, and that's okay. So, go up, take the little break, come back. You're going to be training your aerobic system. That's going to benefit you for the hike. It's keeping you out of that red zone where you have to take a big break and get really fatigued. But you'll notice over time, if you honor that, you'll start to need fewer breaks as you're going, and then eventually you probably won't have to do that. So give yourself that space the first, month, 6 weeks, whatever it takes on the trail, and I think you'll feel much better building into things. So those are the two, planning tips, planning, pacing. Nothing big to share from that kind of internal perspective now. I just had just for me, nothing much to say about it yet, but I just had a thought out there a couple days ago. Wasn't feeling good, sitting on the cliff side, and I was like, why am I out here? It was really weird, because not once did that cross my mind on the Appalachian Trail. And so I sat with it. Part of me was like, do I want to be out here? Also never crossed my mind on the AT. And the answer was yes. I do want to be out here. But where on the AT, I would have said at least internally I knew why I was out there. It's a different feeling this time through. And the thing that came up was more a self-acceptance. I think this journey for me is about self-acceptance, whatever that ends up meaning. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I just wanted to share those things too. It's and I think too, just knowing like you're out there through hiking. I was probably on the outlier side on the AT, where it never crossed my mind once that I was like, I just want to stop this. And it's not that that's what's crossed my mind out here, but it's just a different feeling. So I think knowing it's okay, whatever comes up is okay. It's, this is your journey. This is your chance to experience beautiful nature and yourself in a whole different way. So you know, instead of like pushing that thought away when it popped up in my head, I was like, oh no, let me consider this. Let me feel into that. So yeah, happy to be out here. And even looking back at a couple pictures yesterday, I was like, nah, this is the experience of a lifetime, and I'm really grateful for it, and grateful for everything that I learned along the way. So I hope that helps you in some fashion. Happy trails, and yeah, as things pop up between towns, I'll hop on and share, maybe with a full cup of coffee next time. All right, cheers.